Falcons? Mac here. It's that time. You know, everybody asks, Mac, when are we talking about Pluto? Well, here it is. It's that time. I got my Pluto shirt on. We're going to talk about my connection to Pluto and why I love the planet. We also have a Highlands Ranch High School connection to Pluto. Dr. Kelsey Singer, who graduated in 2002, from Highlands Ranch High School, worked on the New Horizons mission and is a planetary geologist who studies Pluto. So it's a two-part series. We have this week's video and we'll have next week's video. So please make sure you tune in. It's a very unique time, very exciting time for Pluto research. So enjoy.
Hi, Bob's class. Nice to meet you by video. I was very excited that Bob asked me to come and speak to you today. He probably already said this, but my name is Kelsey Singer and I work at a research institute in Boulder. Bob asked me to talk about a couple of things. So I'll start out with just a little bit about my path, how I became a planetary scientist. Then I'll mention a little bit about what it's like to work on a spacecraft mission. And then for the third and final topic, I'll take you on a little tour of some of the cool geologic features on Pluto. I also went to Highlands Ranch High School, and so I'm going to start sharing my screen here to show you a picture to prove that. I was on the tennis team. I graduated in 2002, so that's getting to be a little while ago now. And I compared the teachers who were there when I was there versus now, and I think there's only four left. Mr. Woods, Mr. Orberg, Mr. Cushing, and Mr. Ingram, and Bob can confirm or deny if they're still there. And you guys have a lot of other great teachers now, including your teacher, Bob. So after high school, I went to University of Colorado for undergrad. I majored in both anthropology and astronomy because I was interested in a lot of different things, and I still hadn't quite decided what I wanted to do. And in the end, I decided that I'd like to continue in astronomy. I went to graduate school at Washington University in St. Louis. And there I kind of did a mix of geology and astronomy, and that's really what planetary science is about. I always think of planetary science as being kind of in the middle of lots of different geological fields and lots of different astronomical topics. After I got my PhD, which was in 2013, I went on to work on one spacecraft mission called LROC, or the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter Camera. And that is a spacecraft that's orbiting the moon. It's taking pictures and all sorts of other data, and it's still doing that today. I then was very lucky to join the New Horizons mission, and that's the mission that went by Pluto. We're going to talk a little bit more about that one. I wanted to pause here and say, I know I can't answer your questions in real time, but if you do have questions, feel free to send them to Bob and he can pass them on to me, and I'd be very happy to answer your questions. So now a little bit about the New Horizons spacecraft. It launched in January of 2006. I like to ask you guys how old you were in 2006. Probably you weren't terribly old. Probably you were pretty young. And think about how much has happened in your life over the course of those years since 2006 to the present. And a lot has happened, right? You're in high school now. And so a lot has happened for the New Horizons spacecraft as well. We launched in 2006. We reached the Jupiter system in just a little over a year. And you may not know this, but that's really fast for a spacecraft to go even that far in that amount of time. And that's because the spacecraft is traveling at 14 kilometers per second, which equates to about 30,000 miles an hour. So it's really speeding along, and even at that high speed, it still took 9.5 years to get to Pluto. You can see Pluto here in this yellow orbit, and it's quite far away. So we got there in 2015. We flew through the Pluto system, and we call it the Pluto system because it's not just Pluto. Pluto also has a very large moon called Charon, and then there's 4 smaller moons. So Pluto has 5 moons total. Now you can see there's this kind of dusty looking ring outside the orbit of Pluto, and that's representing the Kuiper Belt. And it's a bunch of bodies, most of them smaller than Pluto. Pluto is the largest of the Kuiper Belt objects, and you can also see it's kind of at the inner edge. So we consider it the gateway to the Kuiper Belt. And these smaller bodies we also wanted to explore. So when we flew through the Pluto system, we flew by, we took a bunch of pictures and other data and just kept going. And that's because the spacecraft was going so fast and has so much energy that it can't stop there. Fortunately, we were also able to go by very close to another small object, and that's shown here. Its name is Arakoth. That's a Native American word for sky. And you can see it's a very funky, kind of snow person-shaped object. And this is the first time we've ever been to an object like this. We didn't know what it was going to look like. Now I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what it's like to work on a spacecraft mission. And I have this fun picture here of your teacher, Bob, and his family who got to come out when we had the flyby of the snow person object last year in 2019. And when we have a flyby, either the Pluto system or Arakoth, we all get together in the same place so we can work very efficiently. And here's just a couple other pictures from that event. We were starting to get pictures back as we got closer to Pluto. And so this is a group of us all trying to work together on that. And now I have a quiz question for you, and that is, who is this gentleman over here on the left? Well, if you guess that it is Brian May, who is the lead guitarist in Queen, you would be correct. And I would totally give you a sticker if I was there in person. And it turns out that lots of people, including famous musicians, also are really interested in science. Brian May happens to have his own PhD, which he worked on while being a musician. And he's really into imaging and 3D imaging, and that's actually what I'm showing him here. So we have all sorts of people who work on spacecraft missions. This is another image of us getting some of the first pictures down, and we are very excited about Pluto, as you can tell. And we have artists who work on the mission. We have education and outreach specialists who work on the mission. Of course, we have scientists of all different kinds, people who study geology, people who study the atmosphere. And this is kind of a fun picture where we were trying to figure out the shape of Arakoth, the snow person-like object. And so we're even using clay and all sorts of things, 3D scanners, to try and visualize what this thing looks like. And I got to be on TV, so that was my moment of fame. All right, now we're going to get into the Pluto geology tour. I'll give you a little background first. And this is a view of our lovely Earth with Pluto and Pluto's large moon Charon for comparison. So Pluto is about 1/6 the size of Earth, and Charon is about 1/2 the size of Pluto. So you can see that Pluto and Charon are close in size, and so sometimes people even call them a double planetary system. Pluto's just a little bit smaller than Earth's moon. This is one of the views we got flying in to Pluto as we were approaching with the spacecraft. And what we found was this very cool heart-shaped feature on Pluto. This heart has engendered a lot of different memes, and you can see some of them here, especially on Valentine's Day. And we love the heart on Pluto. It makes Pluto one of the many fun features of Pluto. This is an animation showing our approach to Pluto with the spacecraft and how we took pictures. So as we approached, we took pictures on the way in. We kind of came around the side, and then we looked back and took pictures looking back as well. So now I'm going to switch to another application here to do our Pluto geology tour. This is an application called ArcGIS. And GIS, there's also free versions of this program. And it turns out that you can go and download these images. Anyone can download these images and look at them just like I do. So normally I would ask you what you would like to zoom in on, but I will pick a few places, and if I don't pick the spot you would like to see closer, you can find a lot more images online, or you can send me a note and I will send you some pictures as well. So let's see, where should we pick? Let's try the dark area first. Why not? This is a very interesting area on Pluto. Besides just being dark, you can see there's a lot of other things going on. So I'll zoom in first on this feature here. And it turns out this is actually a mountain range. We're looking down on top of it, and it's got some brighter frosts on the top, very similar to like what might happen on Earth. There's also a number of circular features here. And since you are in Bob's class, I'm sure you know what those are. These are impact craters. And it's interesting on Pluto because we have some areas that have lots of impact craters and then other areas that have almost no impact craters, and see if you can notice that as we go around the map. I'm going to zoom in here on this particularly interesting impact crater. You can see it's got a very tall central peak. And that happens as craters get larger. You can see these smaller ones don't have central peaks. There's also some kind of brighter, interesting material here that seems to be filling in the base. And we'll look at another feature in just a minute that might be related to this. So you can see if you figure out what that bright material is. And then there's also a whole bunch of fractures cutting across the surface here, and that's from breaks or openings in the surface. Now, I should mention that most of what we're looking at is actually made up of water ice. Most of the outer 1/3 of the entirety of Pluto is mostly water ice. And this dark material is more like a dusting or coating of carbon type materials. And you'll be familiar with carbon being dark because carbon is what makes up your pencil lead. So there's a few other ices on Pluto because it's so cold there that everything forms as an ice on the surface. Now I'm going to zoom over to the heart. This is the left side of the heart. And you might also notice some odd features here. So you can see this pattern on the top of this ice. And it turns out that this left side of the heart and the right side of the heart are kind of different. But all these smooth, bright areas that you see are all nitrogen ice. So it's so cold on Pluto that instead of being a gas, like nitrogen is in our atmosphere, it forms an ice. And this is a giant nitrogen ice sheet. And what forms this strange pattern is, it changes the stretch as you zoom in here so you can see the contrast in the image. What forms this strange pattern we think is actually very similar to what happens in a lava lamp. So there's my next quiz question. Who knows what a lava lamp is? I hope at least a few of you. So what happens in a lava lamp is it's heated from the base, the blobs of material start to rise, they reach the top and they get cooler, and then they fall back down. And interestingly, we think that's what's happening here on the surface of Pluto. That is forming this pattern is from material rising and falling in each of these little polygons. I'm going to show you one more feature. I'm going to scroll down here. We're going to go to the tip of the heart. And at the very base of the tip of the heart, there's a different kind of feature. One of the cool things about Pluto is that if you took any little square of Pluto, you wouldn't know what the rest of Pluto looked like because there's so many different things going on across Pluto. So I'm going to zoom in here. And this is a strange looking feature. You can see it's got this lumpy stuff. There's a giant hole in the middle. There's possibly some little flows here. Any ideas about what it might be? We think this might be an icy volcano. It could be very different from the volcanoes on Earth because it looks nothing like the volcanoes we have on Earth. But we think that there could be material coming from below the surface, coming up and building up this volcano. And this is one of the many mysteries on Pluto. We don't know exactly how all of these features form. There's lots of work for future planetary scientists, possibly yourself, to figure out how all of these things form. So I will leave you there, and as I said, happy to take your questions. Very nice to chat with you. Bye.
That was pretty awesome. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Kelsey Singer for tuning in and helping us learn more about her research, her background, and also what's going on with Pluto, Arrokoth, New Horizons. It's an amazing mission. So much work has gone into this. And it's really cool that we have a Highlands Ranch High School connection to it. So if you want to learn more about New Horizons and what it's studying, check out the New Horizons website. A lot of really cool information there. You can go to the Pluto tab and you can learn about Pluto, its moon Charon, and its other moons and the images it took. You can learn more about MU69, formerly known as Ultima Thule, now known as Arrokoth. the most distant object ever studied and flown by in our solar system by a spacecraft, and then really cool images and gallery. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I can send it over to Kelsey, and she would be more than happy to answer your questions. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Mac out.